The day my lungs failed me, I never imagined it would be the first domino in losing my family, my home, and almost my life. The day the wind shifted off the bay, cold and sharp as knives, I collapsed on my back deck, gasping for air like a fish plucked from the sea. My hands clawed at the railing, lungs burning, vision tunneling. That moment, brutal and absurd, wasn't supposed to happen to someone like me. 41, non-smoker, avid hiker, clean blood work for 10 years running. I didn't even get colds. But when I woke up in the ER, tethered to tubes and machines like some Frankenstein experiment, the doctors told me something no clean living lifestyle could dodge. Idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. Aggressive, they said. End stage. The term sounded like something out of a war manual. Scar tissue was overtaking my lungs. Every breath would soon become a battle. Every exertion a potential collapse. No cure, only treatment, and even that experimental. I sat there stunned while the world outside the window spun on. Cars still passed, birds still chirped, people still lived like tomorrow was guaranteed. Back home, I told Marissa over a quiet dinner. She stirred her wine with one finger as I spoke, her face caught somewhere between disbelief and polite grief. Tyler, her 17-year-old son from her first marriage, barely looked up from his phone. "That's a lot," she said finally, her voice hollow. I nodded. I wasn't looking for sympathy, just something. I explained the doctor's plan, oxygen therapy, antifibrotic meds, an intensive pulmonary rehab program, and possibly a new clinical trial in Boston. It would be hell. I knew it. I was ready to fight it anyway. I said that aloud, maybe too confidently. "I'll beat this," I told them. "I just need you both with me." Marissa reached out and touched my hand, gently. "Of course," she whispered. "In sickness and in health, remember?" I smiled, though I noticed she didn't squeeze back. Tyler nodded vaguely, muttering something about school. I chose to believe they meant it. I needed to. In that moment, I told myself we were still a family, that no matter how bad it got, I wouldn't be alone. I had no idea how wrong I was. At first, things moved like I hoped they would. Marissa drove me to my first few appointments, helped set up the oxygen concentrator in the guest room, and even brought home a pulse oximeter shaped like a little blue crab that made me laugh more than I should have. Tyler picked up a few groceries, helped carry in my medications, even made a half-hearted attempt at cooking one night. I remember thinking, we'll get through this. They're here. But support, I learned, is rarely a straight line. It erodes in pieces so small at first you don't notice, until one day the structure's gone and you're left standing in the wreckage, wondering when the foundation cracked. The first change was Marissa's tone. She stopped asking, "How are you feeling?" and started asking, "Do you still need help with that?" Her eyes grew tired, not from lack of sleep, but from looking at me. At breakfast, she'd sigh if I coughed too long, and her lips tightened every time I reminded her about another early morning hospital trip. Tyler, who used to joke about me being iron lungs when we hiked, he stopped eating at the table, started coming home later, left headphones in even when we sat in the same room. I began asking for less. I convinced myself I could do more. On good days, I showered alone. On bad ones, I sat at the edge of the bed, holding the oxygen mask with both hands, waiting for my lungs to remember how to breathe. One morning, I had a rehab session at 6:30 a.m., earlier than usual. I couldn't drive myself. I knocked gently on the bedroom door. No answer. I knocked again. Finally, Marissa opened it, hair messy, face blank. "Could you just take an Uber today?" she asked, not even waiting for my answer before turning back toward the bed. I stood there for a moment, frozen, lungs wheezing, mind reeling. I called for a car. The driver was an older woman who offered to wait after my appointment to bring me home again. She even helped me up the porch stairs when my legs gave out. That kindness, a stranger's kindness, pierced deeper than anything Marissa had said or hadn't said in weeks. When I got home and rested, I finally confronted them both, sat them down in the living room with my portable oxygen tank hissing softly beside me. "Do you feel like I've become a burden?" I asked, voice low, eyes steady. Marissa looked away. Tyler stared at the floor. The silence spoke first. Then, quietly, Marissa said, "It's just a lot. We didn't know it would be like this." Tyler added, you need so much help." And there it was. That moment. The crack in the wall. The slow, cold shift from "we're in this together" to "you're on your own." After that conversation, I stopped pretending. I saw the truth in their eyes. Tired, frustrated, worn out from carrying a weight they hadn't expected and didn't want. I didn't blame them, not anymore, but I also wasn't going to beg for compassion. So I offered a solution. A professional, a nurse who could manage the treatments, track my medications, and take the pressure off all of us. Marissa hesitated at first. Her mouth opened like she was about to argue. Then she nodded. "Maybe it would help," she said. I caught the relief she tried to hide behind that sentence. Tyler didn't say anything at all. The hospital connected me with someone by the end of the week. Ria Sandoval, a respiratory therapist with oncology experience and a resume full of terminal care cases. She was younger than I expected, mid-30s, with sharp dark eyes and hair pulled tight in a bun. She moved with precision, like someone who'd learned early not to waste energy. "You'll be my last client before I take a sabbatical," she said during our first meeting, "so you've got my full attention, whether you like it or not." And somehow, I did like it. Ria was efficient, firm, and uninterested in my pride. She established a strict schedule, meals at set times, breathing therapy every morning, oxygen level checks every 4 hours. She organized my medications into labeled trays, created a board with emergency numbers, updated Marissa and Tyler in a shared calendar app. It should have been a relief to them, but something shifted the moment Ria stepped in. Marissa started hovering more than helping, watching her from doorways, answering questions I didn't ask. One night, after Ria left, Marissa asked flatly, "Couldn't we find a male nurse instead?" I told her none had the right credentials, and more importantly, Ria was here, now, doing the job Marissa had walked away from. I thought it would help. I really did. But instead of lightening the load, Ria's presence seemed to expose a deeper fracture. Marissa wasn't just stepping back, she was pulling away completely. And for the first time since my diagnosis, I realized she wasn't waiting for me to get better, she was waiting for a way out. It happened on a Tuesday. I remember because it was raining hard, one of those coastal storms that felt like the sky had split open. I'd just returned from a grueling rehab session, my chest raw from forced breathing exercises, muscles trembling, skin cold under damp clothes. Ria helped me through the door, walked me to the couch, and insisted I rest before dinner. "No heroics today," she warned, tightening the oxygen mask before heading out. I fell asleep with the rain pelting the windows, a blanket over my legs, and a quiet sort of calm in my bones. I thought maybe we were settling into a rhythm. I thought, stupidly, that things were getting better. When I woke up, the house was too quiet. At first, I didn't notice the absence. I shuffled to the kitchen for a glass of water and found the fridge half empty, the leftovers gone, the neatly organized meds chart tossed aside. Upstairs, our bedroom door was open. Inside, the closet stripped bare. No shoes at the door, no perfume on the dresser. In the hallway, Tyler's room was hollowed out too. Just a few scattered papers, a broken charger cord, and an unmade bed. It wasn't just that they had left. It was that they had planned it, moved out methodically, quietly, without a word. A folded note sat on the coffee table, just one sentence written in Marissa's looping cursor. "We need space. This has become too much." That was it. No goodbye, no "I love you," not even a signature. I stood there for a long time, note in one hand, the oxygen line hissing beside me. The walls of the house seemed to exhale around me, suddenly cavernous, suddenly not mine. I didn't cry. Not then. Instead, I called Ezra. He was 3 hours away, but said he'd be there by nightfall. True to his word, he pulled into the driveway before the moon rose, a duffel bag slung over one shoulder, jaw clenched so tight I thought he might shatter a tooth. "She really left you like this?" he asked after walking through the house. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He saw in the empty rooms, the untouched dishes, the silence hanging like smoke. For 3 days, Ezra stayed, cooked, cleaned, sat with me when the nights got long and the breathing got worse. On the third morning, he offered a solution. His wife's sister, Vanessa, needed a place to stay. She was divorcing a manipulative husband, had nowhere to go while finishing law school, and was desperate for stability. "She's good people," he said. "You'd be helping her as much as she'd be helping you." I nodded. I didn't have the strength to argue. I just knew I didn't want to be alone again. Vanessa arrived on a chilly Sunday morning, tucked inside a battered blue sedan, packed with textbooks, laundry baskets, and a suitcase that had clearly seen better days. Ezra helped her unload, while I watched from the front steps, a blanket draped around my shoulders, and my oxygen tank humming at my feet. She looked younger than I expected, late 20s maybe, but when she turned to me, her smile was genuine, cautious, but warm. "Thank you for letting me stay," she said, her voice soft but clear. "I promise not to get in the way." She didn't, not once. Vanessa moved quietly through the house, unpacking only what she needed, taking the guest room Marissa had refused to sleep in during my worst nights. She cooked modest meals, simple soups, grilled vegetables, scrambled eggs, and left extra in the fridge labeled with sticky notes. She studied late into the night, laptop aglow behind her closed door, and always asked, before using the washer or changing the thermostat. There was no fuss, no pity, no intrusion, just presence. And oddly, that presence began to anchor me. She didn't hover like Marissa, didn't check in every 5 minutes with wide, fearful eyes. Vanessa offered help when needed, and space when I needed that more. I told her I had a nurse already. Ria still came by daily, and she nodded, completely unfazed. "You focus on healing," she said. "I'll handle the groceries." For the first time in months, the house felt still but not empty. I didn't feel like a patient or a problem or a burden. I felt, however briefly, like I could just be a man in his home again. The healing didn't come in a wave. It arrived in pieces, subtle, almost forgettable moments that only revealed their weight in hindsight. A morning where I didn't need help getting out of bed, a walk to the end of the driveway without gasping, a meal I cooked for myself without collapsing into a chair afterward. My doctor called it a miracle of stubborn cells and sheer will. The new medication regimen was working. My lungs weren't perfect, but the fibrosis had slowed, then plateaued, and with it came strength I thought I'd never feel again. Ria came by less often, and eventually she told me she was moving on. "You don't need me anymore," she said, hugging me tighter than I expected. "You've got air in your chest and a spine that didn't break." I thanked her, but the words didn't feel like enough. She hadn't just treated me. She'd held me together when everything else had come apart. After she left, I sat alone for a long time. Not sad, just still. With my energy returning, I began cooking more, reading again, taking short walks with Vanessa when her schedule allowed. She always insisted on carrying the heavier bags, but never once treated me like glass. We shared meals, stories, silences that didn't ache. I learned that stillness could be safety, not just emptiness. Then one morning, over coffee, I told her something I hadn't said to anyone. I think it's time for me to move. The house held too many echoes, too many rooms haunted not by ghosts, but by memories that wouldn't sit still. Vanessa looked at me with a soft smile. "Wherever you go," she said, "make sure it's somewhere you can breathe." So I started looking toward the woods. I moved in early September, just as the leaves in Vermont began to turn. The air there was different, cleaner, thinner, edged with pine and silence. My new place was a small cabin nestled in the forest near a town called Chester, far enough from any main road that I couldn't hear anything but wind and the occasional squirrel with an attitude. It wasn't much: a wood stove, a galley kitchen, a porch that creaked under its own weight, but it was mine. And more importantly, it was untouched by memories. Vanessa stayed behind in Maine, the house now in her name, a gift, I told her, for being the only person who stood beside me when everything else fell away. She didn't argue, just hugged me and said, "Call if you ever get bored of trees and want noise again." We both knew I wouldn't. My nearest neighbor was a retired librarian named Helen, whose property was just visible through the trees. She showed up with a loaf of cranberry bread and a look that said she'd already decided to adopt me as some sort of honorary nephew. We sat on my porch, drinking tea and talking about wood stoves, storms, and the best place to buy boots. There was no pressure, no expectation, just a quiet. For the first time in over a year, I wasn't bracing for the next loss. I wasn't counting breaths. I was simply breathing. It started with a knock. I didn't answer. Helen came by that afternoon, her brow furrowed under a faded sun hat. "Strangers," she said, in that dry Vermont way that made every word sound like a warning. "Two of them, a woman and a boy. Well, not quite a boy anymore. They were asking around the road. Said they were looking for someone named Julian." My stomach turned before she even finished the sentence. "Said he used to live here," she added. "Used to. Like you were gone." I asked if they said their names, but she shook her head. "Didn't have to," I muttered, already knowing. That night, I checked the security camera mounted above the cabin's porch. Grainy footage confirmed what I feared. Marissa and Tyler, standing just outside the reach of the motion sensor light, staring at the windows as if they could see through them. Tyler looked taller, older. Marissa looked the same, only more weathered, like a portrait left too long in the sun. They didn't try to knock again, just waited for a while, pacing, then drove off in a dented white SUV. How they found me, I couldn't say. Only my brother and Vanessa had the new address. Maybe Tyler had scoured public records, or maybe desperation made them resourceful. Either way, I felt the cold fingers of my past groping at the edges of this quiet life I'd built, and it unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. Helen, ever protective, told me not to worry. "If they come back, I'll handle it," she said, like she was talking about raccoons. "No one's taking your peace unless you let him." I wanted to believe that, but old wounds have a way of opening just when the skin forgets how to bleed. That night, I double-checked every lock and fell asleep with the weight of a silence that... They came back 2 days later, this time with fury instead of questions. I was in my home office, halfway through reviewing a CAD blueprint for a freelance project, when the sound of shattering glass snapped me to attention. I rushed into the living room to find the front window cracked wide open, the cold autumn window spilling into the space like a warning. Outside, voices shouted. My heart kicked like a mule in my chest. I grabbed my phone and checked the security feed. There they were. Marissa holding a bat, yelling incoherently, and Tyler, now taller than me, circling the porch with wild eyes. By the time I got outside, 2 of my neighbors, Helen and her cousin Alan, were already trying to calm the situation, standing between my ex-wife and my home-like human shields. Marissa's hair was wild, her jacket soaked with sweat despite the chill. "You're alive!" she shrieked, the bat lowering slightly. "Why didn't you tell us? We thought you thought I was dead, so you could swoop in and claim what you didn't want to fight for," I said, voice low and sharp. "Don't pretend this is about love." She stared at me, stunned. I could see the moment it clicked that not only was I alive, but I was thriving without her, that I had moved on, that she had no place here anymore. Tyler said nothing, just shifted uncomfortably, as if unsure whether to stand beside her or run. "I sent you divorce papers months ago," I told her. "You never responded. It's done. You left me when I couldn't breathe. Don't show up now like it was a misunderstanding." Marissa tried to protest, rambled about Tyler's college, about hard times, about the house in Maine being gone. "We need help," she finally snapped. "You owe us something." I stepped closer, meeting her eyes without flinching. "I owe you nothing." That's when she swung. The bat didn't reach me. The sheriff's cruiser had pulled up moments earlier, and before she could even lift it a second time, 2 deputies had her and Tyler in cuffs. They wailed, begged. I stood silent on the porch, glass crunching underfoot, and didn't feel a thing. The next morning, the window was boarded up, and Helen brought over a thermos of coffee like nothing had happened. "You handled that better than I would have," she said, handing me a tin of cookies like it was a peace offering for surviving hell. I smiled, but there was no triumph in me, just a steady, grounded stillness, the kind that comes after a storm tears through and you realize the walls held. Marissa was facing charges for trespassing, vandalism, and attempted assault. Tyler, being 17, would likely get community service. I didn't feel satisfaction, just closure. Finally, the door was closed. That evening, I walked out to the edge of the forest and stood beneath a sky smeared with fading pinks and oranges. I thought about everything: oxygen tanks, cold dinners, empty rooms, betrayal, silence, survival. I thought about what it meant to be abandoned and how somehow that abandonment had stripped me down to something real, something solid. I had made it, not with their help, but despite them. Inside, my latest woodworking project waited a rough but sturdy chair carved by my own recovering hands. I'd name it Resilience, I decided. Fitting, maybe a little dramatic, but earned. I no longer kept my phone on loud. I didn't wait for apologies or try to make sense of what couldn't be fixed. I had air in my lungs, a roof over my head, and people who chose to stay. And at last, I was exactly where I wanted to be. This story reveals a powerful truth. When adversity strikes, it doesn't just test your health, it tests your relationships, your resilience, and your sense of self. Julian's journey through illness, abandonment, and recovery exposes how easily words like forever and family can dissolve when comfort is replaced by burden. But in that harsh unraveling, he discovers something stronger than loyalty bound by vows. He finds the quiet strength of chosen support, of people who show up not out of obligation, but out of humanity. The lesson here is that not everyone meant to start the journey is now meant to finish it with you. Julian's healing wasn't just physical, it was emotional. It was the realization that surviving hardship doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like solitude, growth, and starting over. And in the end, peace isn't something we inherit, it's something we build, breath by breath,